how living a frugal life can help you create wealth. Well, today I'm going to discuss how frugal life can give you an edge financially. So let's go. Before that, we need to understand the challenges of our modern day consumerism. Now, don't get me wrong, we do need stuff in our life for making our life easier. But when the stuff starts taking over, that's when the problem is. That's when consumerism becomes a problem. You start spending your hard-earned money blindly on material possessions, thinking that those stuffs will add value to your life. But guess what? You're actually adding mental stress to your life. You're adding long hours at work, and due to this, you're actually losing your freedom. You become slave to your job and slave to the bank. Consumerism keeps you on the hamster wheel forever. It doesn't have to be like that. So what's the way forward? You guessed it right. It's frugality. It's simple life. Now don't get confused with being cheap. Cheap is not spending money and depriving yourself. Whereas frugality is all about being resourceful and being smart with your money. It's about making choices that's aligned with your financial goal. Now, being a frugal person myself, I know and I believe that frugality is one of the best weapons to combat rising price and gaining control over your life. And there are so many benefits being frugal, and few of the biggest ones are no social pressure of keeping up with the Jones. I know my priorities and I focus on what truly matters. Have you ever been to a situation where you meet people and find yourself a bit awkward? All the conversations are around stuffs. A 7-seater car, a 6-bedroom house for a family of 3, private schooling, big holidays and whatnot. And the funniest thing is, they try to sound humble, but they're actually bragging. Well, that situation is very common. But you know what? It's all fake. They're not talking about the real cost, the hidden cost. It's not only the money, it's the stress, it's the anxiety, and even the depression that comes with all these material possessions. So trying to keep up with your social circle or friend circle can lead to a financial disaster. Ever heard of someone drowning in debt because they bought a car they couldn't afford? Yes, that's the Jones effect. And that's where you don't want to be. The freedom of not caring is so liberating, and I can say this from my own experience. Because I have a very simple life, I can focus on the essentials and cut down the excess. It's all about decluttering your life, both physically and mentally. Now, how do you prioritize and focus on the essentials? Now, there's a budgeting rule called the 50-30-20 rule, where 50% of your after-tax monthly income is for your needs, like housing, food, utility bills. 30% is for your wants, like if you want a new gadget or eating out or Netflix. And the remaining 20% is for your savings and investments. Now, if you haven't started tracking your expenses and budgeting, I strongly suggest you start doing so. And I'll put the link for my budgeting spreadsheet for you. Feel free to download it and use it. That way you'll get into the habit of tracking your expenses and over time get better at it. Personally, I've been tracking my expenses since the day I started earning, and that gave me a lot of insights about my spending habits. Because I'm a frugal person and I know exactly how much money I spend every month, I don't essentially follow that 50-30-20 rule because my savings are way higher. So it's usually like 60-40, like 60% is my entire expenses for the month and 40% is savings and investments. And because of this frugal and simple life, I've been able to save approximately 1 year worth of emergency fund and create a diversified portfolio that's generating approximately $1,500 on dividend. It wouldn't have been possible if I weren't frugal. Now, emergency fund is something you can't ignore. It's a fund that you can cash anytime life hits you hard. So typically it's good to have at least 3 months of emergency fund, but it's a very good idea if you can afford a 1-year emergency fund. So how do you calculate an emergency fund? You need to know your basic monthly expenses. So now if you want to build a 1-year emergency fund, you want to multiply your basic monthly expenses times 12. So for example, if your basic expenses for a month is $3,000, you multiply with 12. So basically approximately $36,000 will be your emergency fund. Frugality also helped me in prioritizing and focusing on what truly matters. And I'm proud to say that I've never ever ordered an online home delivery food. Yes, I know it's hard to believe, but you know what? I don't even have those apps installed on my phone. Well, I go to the restaurants once or twice a month, which is approximately $100 to $200 a month, but that's about it. I mostly eat healthy food at home. I don't have any credit card payments, no buy now pay later payments, no car payments. Whatever I have, I own it. Now let's look into a few interesting stats, the average scenario in the US and in Australia. To give you a perspective, an average American is paying approximately $735 a month on a new car, approximately $4,000 eating out or takeaway food every year, and approximately $7,200 on credit card balance. every single year. Similarly, an average Australian is spending around $3,070 on credit card per year, approximately $50 to $70 a week on takeaway food, which is roughly about $2,500 to $3,600 a year, and car payments of approximately $9,800 a year. Now let's take these two scenarios and add these numbers to see more visually. So the Americans spending approximately $8,000 on car, $4,000 on takeaway food, and $7,000 on credit card, which is roughly about $20,000 every year. Similarly, for an average Australian, they're spending around $3,000 on credit card, $2,600 on takeaway food, and $9,800 on cars. So that's roughly around $15,000 every year. Now, if you go to the Vanguard index chart, you'll see the US shares is giving approximately 10% return every year, and Australian shares is giving a 9.2% every year. Now just imagine if you're not wasting that $20,000 and you're putting that $20,000 in a basic index fund, you'll still get a return of 10% every year for S&P 500, and for Australian share it's a 9.2 per year. So instead of spending that $15,000, you're putting that $15,000 on a ASX 200 index fund and you'll get a 9.2% average return. Now let's get into a compound interest calculator. So just demonstrating the average scenarios, let's look into the American scenario first. We have seen that the average American is spending around $20,000 every year on cars, credit card, and takeaway food. So let's put that $20,000 on an average index fund annually and see how much we can convert that $20,000 in 5 years' time, given the return is 10% based on the Vanguard index chart. You see that $20,000 is now almost $122,000 in 5 years. And similarly, if we put that $20,000 every year for 10 years, that $20,000 becomes almost $320,000. And similarly, if you can do it for 15 years, that $20,000 becomes $635,000. So you see how much wealth we are missing on. Just to give you an idea that frugality can give you so much wealth that you can't even imagine. Now let's jump back in and check the Australian average scenario. So now if we are going to invest $15,000 instead of $20,000 the first 5 years on an average Australian index fund, which is giving a 9.2% average return, we will convert that $15,000 into $90,000 in 5 years. And similarly, if we can do it for 10 years, that $15,000 will become $230,000. And if we can do it for 15 years, that $15,000, my friend, is going to be almost $450,000. So just think how much wealth you're missing out. It's baffling, isn't it? Are you ready to embrace frugality for your financial benefit? I really hope so. And at this point, you might think, okay, so how should I begin? How should I start? Well, I've provided you a 5-step process. I'll share the link in the description. You can check the link and download the free PDF. But anyway, here are the 5 steps that you can follow to start your frugality journey. Number 1 will be track your expenses for a month. Number 2, create a realistic budget based on your expenses. Number 3, cut unnecessary expenses. In that way, it'll increase your savings rate. So number 4, increase your savings rate and use that to start investing, which is number 5. And remember, it's a journey. You don't have to start big. Every small change can lead to significant result over time. I hope you found this video helpful and inspiring. Don't forget to smash that like button, hit the subscribe, share with your friends and your loved ones. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.